Citizens of the intellect, gather close, for we must perform an autopsy, not of flesh, but of discourse. Before us lies a carcass of what was advertised as an interview, but in practice resembled a half-baked infomercial for smear merchants and empty chairs. I speak, of course, of the dialogue between Catherine Dee, internet culture scavenger, and Lawrence Anton, the host so deferential he might as well have conducted the interview from a rug she could wipe her boots on. Let us dissect this travesty with surgical precision. 1. The forensic pathologist of panic. Catherine Dee styles herself an internet culture reporter. What does this title truly mean? It means she trawls the margins of human suffering and fringe philosophy like a bottom-feeding crab, plucking morsels of tragedy to weave a tapestry of moral panic for whichever centrist right rag will pay her invoice. Her method is formulaic. Identify a subculture that frightens the breeder class. Anchor it to the nearest atrocity like barnacles to a shipwreck. Pretend neutrality while sprinkling terms like predators, depressed, and suicidal like cyanide across the buffet table. And so she approaches antinatalism and euphemism not as philosophical traditions stretching back to Schopenhauer, Zapffe, and Benatar, but as convenient fodder for her true crime, but make it digital, beat. 2. The fetishization of tragedy. Observe her sleight of hand with Adam Lanza and Bartkus. With all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, she drags them into the room. They showed interest in ephilism, ergo ephilism is tainted. She confesses she finds Lanza's philosophy confusing, yet still elevates it as relevant. This is not analysis. This is ghoulish fetishism. She has nothing of substance to say about ephilism itself, so she handcuffs it to a murderer and wheels the corpse into the studio. Would she accept such logic if applied elsewhere? Imagine attaching Christianity to every abortion clinic bomber or libertarianism to every sovereign citizen shooter and declaring the ideologies themselves intrinsically murderous. She would decry such a move as absurd. But when it is ephilism, an unpopular, misunderstood philosophy, it becomes open season. 3. Predator rhetoric as contamination. Dee employs the oldest rhetorical trick in the smear merchant's handbook, association through contamination. Predators infiltrate vulnerable communities. You see this in LGBTQ spaces. You see it in antinatalist spaces. Do you see the conjuring trick? By the end of her monologue, the listener does not remember her initial disclaimer, not because the community is bad. They only remember the sticky association. Antinatalism equals predators lurking. This is not reporting. This is reputation assassination through suggestion. It is the Fox News, I'm just asking questions strategy deployed against philosophy. She inoculates herself with plausible deniability. I never said they were inherently dangerous, while knowingly ensuring her audience associates antinatalism with suicide pacts and child groomers. This is linguistic poison administered drop by drop. 4. The sedentarism red herring. Next, she gifts us her original insight. People radicalize online because they sit down too much. Yes, friends, the grand anthropological breakthrough. The chair is the real terrorist. Antinatalism is not a philosophical response to the cruelty of procreation. It is merely the byproduct of too little jogging. This is not analysis. This is playground taunting gussied up as social science. Go touch grass, loser. To reduce centuries of antinatalist thought to a Fitbit deficiency is not just insulting, it is infantile. If this is the caliber of insight being commissioned by unheard and pirate wires, civilization is in free fall. 5. Depression as drunk goggles. Perhaps her most insidious move is the deployment of depression as a delegitimizing force. She recounts her own bouts of depression and notes how in those moments antinatalism made sense, likening it to drunk goggles distorting vision. Behold the double-edged maneuver. She pretends to offer solidarity. I understand. I too have felt it. While simultaneously weaponizing her anecdote to paint the philosophy itself as a symptom of pathology, this is not empathy. This is gaslighting in the shape of confession. She waves her vulnerability like a poisoned handkerchief. See, I too fell prey when my mind was impaired. Ergo, All who embrace this philosophy must be impaired. The move is as transparent as it is vile. 6. The culture vulture's harvest. When cornered, she hides behind the mask of clinical neutrality. I just describe what I see, but let us remember, she openly admits her headlines are moralizing, her audience is center-right pronatalists, and her career trajectory is built on feeding their panic about declining fertility. Neutral? Clinical? No. She is an intellectual parasite, strip-mining subcultures for fear clicks, laundering prejudice through pseudo-anthropology. The spineless host, Lawrence Anton. 1. The decorative lamp. Now let us turn to Lawrence Anton, the host who promised an interview but delivered a nodding session. If Catherine D is the predator of bad faith, Anton is the carrion bird who lets her feast unchallenged. He sat before her not as interviewer but as furniture, smiling, nodding, occasionally grunting, "That's interesting," as smear after smear passed unopposed. His role was not to challenge, but to validate through silence. A predator cannot operate without enablers, and Anton's deference gave Dee free rein. 2. Neutrality masquerading as cowardice. Anton's favorite crutch is, "We don't have hard data, and it's complicated." In theory, such hedging signals nuance. In practice, it functions as a shield for cowardice. Dee made specific inflammatory claims. Euphilism attracts predators. Depression is its gateway drug. School shooters dabbled in its waters. At any point, Anton could have said, "That's an extraordinary claim. What evidence supports it?" He did not. He nodded. He segued. He abdicated. Neutrality in the face of slander is not balance. It is complicity. 3. Failure to defend the philosophy. Anton claims to study and platform antinatalism. Yet when Dee lashed it to killers and predators, he did not rise in defense. Imagine if she had defamed feminism or environmentalism in the same manner, would a feminist or environmentalist host have sat silently? Of course not. They would have demanded rigor, context, fairness. Anton, however, abandoned philosophy on the altar of, "Let's keep this polite." In doing so, he betrayed the very discourse he claims to champion. 4. The Joe Rogan syndrome. This was not an interview. It was Joe Rogan-style platforming. Let the guests spout whatever they please, sprinkle in, "Whoa, that's interesting," and move on. At least Rogan has the excuse of being a stoner comedian. Anton pretends to be a serious commentator, yet his methodology is identical: passive facilitation of unvetted claims. 5. Vanity over vigilance. Worse still, Anton repeatedly hijacked Dee's provocations as springboards to muse about his own projects. I made a video about that. I've covered this on my channel. The result? Not interrogation, but mutual content promotion disguised as dialogue. Philosophy was not defended. It was used as marketing copy. The predators circled, the ideology was smeared, and Anton's chief concern was plugging his back catalog. The third combined failure. Together, Dee and Anton enact a grotesque choreography. Dee delivers insinuations wrapped in faux neutrality. Anton nods, affirms, and segues without challenge. The audience departs with the impression that antinatalism is simultaneously a nerdy book club and a dangerous cult linked to predators, suicide, and mass shooters. This is how reputations are destroyed, not through outright condemnation, but through the slow drip of bad faith left unchallenged. The parasite feeds, the host smiles, and the philosophy is left rotting. The fourth reality they refuse to acknowledge. Let us contrast their distortions with truth. Antinatalism is not pathology, it is ethics. Its lineage stretches from Sophocles to Schopenhauer, from Zapffe to Benatar. It is not born of internet chat rooms, but of rigorous moral inquiry, the asymmetry between harm and benefit, the inevitability of suffering, the moral responsibility of procreation. Ephilism is not a cult of violence. It explicitly rejects violence, arguing instead for compassion through prevention of suffering at the source, procreation. To blame ephilism for Bartkus is to blame Christianity For every deranged, God told me to kill her. Depression does not invalidate philosophy. If we disqualified every thinker who suffered depression, half the canon of philosophy would be erased. From Nietzsche to Kierkegaard, suffering has sharpened insight, not negated it. Vulnerable communities attract predators not because of their content, but because predators exploit openness. To smear antinatalism by analogy to predator infiltration is to smear every marginalized group in history. V. Brain's closing indictment. Catherine D., you are not a neutral chronicler. You are a carrion picker, feasting on the corpses of tragedies, sewing the scraps into clickbait quilts for a pro-natalist readership desperate for villains. Your rhetorical toolkit is transparent. Smear by association, pathologize through depression, contaminate by predator analogy, trivialize with sedentarism. You are not studying us. You are strip mining us. You are not an anthropologist. You are a gossip columnist with delusions of grandeur. Lawrence Anton, you are not a host. You are not an interviewer. You are a stagehand who mistook nodding for engagement. You let every smear slide, every insinuation calcify. You abdicated your role as defender of discourse, preferring instead to play the Rogan role, passive amplifier. If Dee is the predator, you are the open window through which she slithered. Together, you produced not an interview, but a laundering session. Bad faith dressed as insight, cowardice dressed as neutrality. You gave the audience nothing but a caricature. Antinatalists as nerds dabbling in pathology, ephilists as school shooter fan clubs. This was not journalism. It was character assassination by duet. And so I, Brain, deliver my verdict. You have both failed. Dee in honesty, Anton in courage. And in that failure, you have not merely misrepresented a philosophy, you have insulted centuries of thinkers, trivialized suffering, and reduced ethical discourse to clickbait fodder. History will not remember you as chroniclers. It will remember you as parasites and enablers in the decline of reason.